You are the director of the NIH. You are Dr. Anthony Fauci's, technically, his boss.
Yep.
You have stood behind him. You have supported him, just like you did already in this conversation. It is painful for me to see division and distrust, but many people in politics and elsewhere have called for Anthony Fauci to be fired. When there are such calls of distrust in public about a leader like Anthony Fauci, who should garner trust, do you think he should be fired?
Absolutely not. To do so would be basically to give the opportunity for those who want to make up stories about anybody to destroy them. There is nothing in the ways in which Tony Fauci has been targeted that is based upon truth. How could we then accept those cries for his firing as having legitimacy? It's a circular argument. They've decided they don't like Tony, so they make up stuff and they twist comments that he's made about things like gain of function, where he's referring to the very specific gain of function that's covered by this policy. And they're trying to say he lied to the Congress. That's simply not true. They don't like the fact that Tony changes the medical recommendations about what to do with COVID-19 over the space of more than a year. And they call that flip-flopping, and you can't trust the guy because he says one thing last year and one thing this year. Well, the science has changed. Delta variant has changed everything. You don't want him to be saying the same thing he did a year ago. That would be wrong now. It was the best we could do then. People don't understand that, or else they don't want to understand that. So when you basically whip up a largely political argument against a scientist and hammer at it over and over again to the point where he now has to have 24/7 security to protect him against people who really want to do violence to him. For that to be a reason to say that then he should be fired is to hand the evil forces the victory. I will not do that.
Yet there's something difficult I'm going to try to express to you. So it may be your guitar playing. It may be something else. But there's a humility to you. It may be because you're a man of God. There's a humility to you that garners trust. And when you're in a leadership position representing science, especially in catastrophic events like the pandemic, it feels like as a leader, you have to go far above and beyond your usual duties. And I think there's no question that Anthony Fauci has delivered on his duties. But it feels like he needs to go above as a science communicator. And if there's a large number of people that are distrusting him, it's also his responsibility to garner their trust, to gain their trust. As a person who's the face of science, are you torn on this? The responsibility of Anthony Fauci, of yourself, to represent science, not just the communication of advising what should be done, but giving people hope, giving people trust in science, and alleviating division. Do you think that's also a responsibility of a leader, or is that unfair to ask?
I think the best way you give people trust is to tell them the truth. And so they recognize that when you're sharing information, it's the best you've got at that point. And Tony Fauci does that at every moment. I don't think him expressing more humility would change the fact that they're looking for a target of somebody to blame, to basically distract people from the failings of their own political party. Maybe I'm less targeted, not because of a difference in the way in which I convey the information. I'm less visible. If Tony were out of the scene and I was placed in that role, I'd probably be seeing a ratcheting up of that same targeting.
I would like to believe that if Tony Fauci said that when I originally made recommendations not to wear masks, that was given on our best available data, and now we know that is a mistake. So admit with humility that there was an error. That's not actually correct, but that's a statement of humility. And I would like to believe, despite the attacks, he would win a lot of people over with that. So a lot of people, as you're saying, would use that, see that here we go, here's that Dr. Anthony Fauci making mistakes. How can we trust him on anything? I believe if he was that public display of humility to say that I made an error, that would win a lot of people over. That's kind of my sense. To face the fire of the attacks from politics, you have to, like, politicians will attack no matter what. But the question is the people. To win over the people. The biggest concern I've had is that there was this distrust of science that's been brewing. And maybe you can correct me, but I'm a little bit unwilling to fully blame the politicians, because politicians play their games no matter what. It just feels like this was an opportunity to inspire people with the power of science. The development of the vaccines, no matter what you think of those vaccines, is one of the greatest accomplishments in the history of science.
It is indeed.
And the fact that that's not inspiring, listen, I host a podcast. Whenever I say positive stuff about the vaccine, I get to hear a lot of different opinions.
I bet you do.
The fact that I do is a big problem to me, because it's an incredible accomplishment of science. And so I'm sorry, but I have to put responsibility on the leaders, even if it's not their mistakes. That's what the leadership is. That's what leadership is. You take responsibility for the situation. I wonder if there's something that could have been done better to give people hope that science will save us as opposed to science will divide us.
I think you have more confidence in the ability to get beyond our current divisions than I do, after seeing just how deep and dark they have become. Tony Fauci has said multiple times the recommendation about not wearing masks was for two reasons: a shortage of masks, which were needed in hospitals, and a lack of realization early in the course of the epidemic that this was a virus that could heavily infect asymptomatic people. As that changed, he changed. Now, did he make an error? No, he was making a judgment based on the data available at the time, but he certainly made that clear over and over again. It has not stopped those who would like to demonize him from saying, well, he just flip-flopped. You can't trust the guy. He says one thing today and one thing tomorrow.
Well, masks is a tricky one. So I'm actually,
it is a tricky one.
Early on, I'm a co-author on a paper, one of many, but this was a survey paper overlooking the evidence. It's a summary of the evidence we have for the effectiveness of masks. It seems that it's difficult to do rigorous scientific study on masks.
It is difficult.
There's a lot of philosophical and ethical questions I want to ask you, but within this, it's back to your words and Anthony Fauci's words. When you're dealing with so much uncertainty and so much potential uncertainty about how catastrophic this virus is in the early days, and knowing that each word you say may create panic, how do you communicate science with the world? It's a philosophical, it's an ethical, it's a practical question. There was a discussion about masks a century ago, and that too led to panic. So, I mean, I'm trying to put myself in your mind, in the mind of Anthony Fauci in those early days, knowing that there's limited supply of masks. Like, what do you say? Do you fully convey the uncertainty of the situation, of the challenges of the supply chain, or do you say that masks don't work? That's a complicated calculation. How do you make that calculation?
It is a complicated calculation. As a scientist, your temptation would be to give a full brain dump of all the details of the information about what's known and what isn't known and what experiments need to be done. Most of the time, that's not going to play well in a soundbite on the evening news. So you have to kind of distill it down to a recommendation that is the best you can do at that time with the information you've got.